Good afternoon, everyone. This is Valerie Went with Surgent CPA Review. Thank you for joining our webinar this afternoon, where we're going to be talking about how to solve a research simulation. These are the types of task-based simulation questions that you will find on the CPA exam, and we want to make sure that you understand how to answer those questions in order to get the most points. With us today, presenting on the topic of the research simulation, is Jessica Sandhu, who is here as part of Surgent CPA Review. She is our Student Development Manager, and she will be taking care of presenting this topic to you. Throughout the webinar this afternoon, if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to submit those questions in the webinar tool panel that you see there in your screen. We will be taking some time at the close of the webinar to answer your questions. So I'm going to turn the webinar over to Jessica, and she will show you how to solve a research sim. Jessica?
Thanks, Val. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Sandhu. Thanks again for joining us this afternoon. Just really quick, I wanted to tell you a little bit about my experience with the CPA exam. I've actually sat for the CPA exam. I have, experienced everything as far as research simulations, all the other simulations that you end up seeing on the CPA exam. I did take the old version of the CPA exam, and I have sat for the new version of the CPA exam, so I can speak to a little bit of the new and the old version, because I know we probably have some students who have seen both, and we probably have some students on here who, will be taking the new exam. So it's important to know some of the things that have changed, and it's also important to know how certain aspects of the research simulation can actually help you through the rest of your simulations. So I wanted to go ahead and get started by talking to you all a little bit about the simulation section in general, because now it is 50% of your grade, and it's a very important chunk of the CPA exam. So 50% of your exam grade for the audit section, financial, and regulation. 35% for BEC, because we do have 15% that is also attributable to your written communication. So now we have this extra testlet of simulations too. So we have 3 testlets of simulations, and within those testlets, you might see a couple different types of simulations. So we have your regular task-based simulations, which typically, fall around 4. Sometimes can be a little bit more than that, but it's typically 4 for audit, financial, and regulation. And for BEC, you usually have around 2. We also have the document review simulation, which is, exactly what it sounds like it is. And there's usually only one of these. And now that the new exam has been launched, there is a potential to see the document review simulation on BEC as well. So prior to the new exam, it was typical to see the document review simulation on audit, FAR, and reg, but now you may also see it on BEC. We also have something called the enhanced task-based simulation, which you usually only see one of these as well. But the thing about this simulation is that it can test you on other areas of the CPA exam. So for instance, what I had seen when I sat for audit was that they actually tested me on concepts that you would normally find in financial accounting as well. So it's good to keep that in mind as you're going through your studying and you're getting ready to sit for the exam. Now, the last type of simulation that I'm going to talk to you guys about is the research simulation, and that's what we're going to dedicate the rest of our presentation on today. And this simulation is only seen on audit, FAR, and regulation, and it is typical to have one of these simulations, but you can have 2 as well. And I personally think now that the exam is 50% simulation, it'd be really good to master the research simulation, and I'll continue to tell you why in just a second. Let me first explain to you what the research simulation is in general. So what we're trying to do here with the research simulation is assess the skills required to search and examine information from an accounting reference. Back in 2004, when they first launched the computerized version of the CPA exam, they threw on this research simulation because with the advancement of technology and having so much information available via the internet, they wanted to start seeing how well people can look up information using these tools. It's definitely something that is expected even when you're a first-year associate, is to be able to do research. So that's what they're trying to accomplish here. And it requires candidates to search for information that can be found in what's called the authoritative literature. So, for instance, in regulation, they might have a research question where you have to go through tax law to solve. So that kind of also explains why there is no research simulation on BEC, because there really is no authoritative literature that applies to most of the topics tested in that section. So we're able to get a little bit of a break there. But it's also really, really important, and that's why I'm really happy that we're going to be able to go through how to solve a research simulation, because it's important to get very comfortable with the authoritative literature, because as you can see in that last bullet point in this slide, all sections of the authoritative literature are now available in each section of the CPA exam. And you'll see what I'm talking about as we continue on through here. So I just wanted to show you first and foremost, this is exactly what a research simulation is going to look like when you get to your exam. So if you notice, you have your question here, there's a specific area where you're supposed to type in your answer, and at the top you have all these little icons. So if you look at the top right, I tried to point it out for you, there is a little button that says authoritative literature, and that's where you're going to go in order to research this question and ultimately solve it. I know it's a little bit hard to see, so I tried to blow it up big for you so you can see that this is where the authoritative literature tab is located, because previously this tab was actually located at the top left. So now you know where to go, it's easy to find, and you'll be ready when it comes down to exam day. Now, when you go and you open the authoritative literature, if you see at the top left, I circled those tabs for you. So you have auditing, attestation and ethics, federal taxation, and financial reporting. And the way they used to do it on the exam is they would only give you access to the authoritative literature that was for the section that you were sitting for. And now they give you access to all three. So not only is this authoritative literature going to be crucial for solving your research simulation, but it'll also help you when it comes down to your enhanced task-based simulation, which may or may not be testing you on other sections of the exam. And it can also help you out with your other task-based simulations. I always give this example to students when I'm talking to them. I sat for the audit section of the CPA exam, and with the CPA exam and with auditing in general, there's so many different types of reports that you can issue, and it's really difficult to be able to remember the verbiage for every single one of them. So I remember one of my simulations ended up being a auditor's opinion, and you had to fill in all of the blanks. And, here I started panicking a little bit because I knew I wasn't able to memorize all of them while I was studying. So instead, I went to the authoritative literature. I actually was able to look up the report for issuing that specific opinion, and from there, I was able to fill in all the blanks. So right off the bat, I had that done. I had extra time for the rest of my simulations, and I could feel comfortable knowing that I probably got that one right. So figuring out how to use the authoritative literature, practicing these research simulations, it's going to help you not only for that specific type, but for all of the rest of the simulations you may see on the exam. So how to even use the authoritative literature and what's the best way to use it? So obviously you have this search function, and within the search function, you know, there's so many different things that you can search. So you have to be very particular about what you type in there. You know, don't type in too many words. I would say, you know, maybe 3 or 4 keywords if you can find them. And that's the other important thing, is making sure that you can pick out keywords in your research question that you're able to use to search when you're looking for the answer. So let's go back to the problem and actually read it this time. So this problem reads, Lanny Financial offers credit cards to college students at a variable rate on outstanding balances. The company also charges an annual fee for using the line of credit. Which section of the authoritative literature best defines how and when Lanny should use or should recognize the annual fee revenue? So it's important to go back and pick out the keywords, which I've kind of done here for you already, and also identify what exactly they're asking you to do. So we want to know how and when Lanny should recognize the annual fee revenue. The other thing is be very, very careful when you're reading these questions, because this specific question was a little confusing. They first say that this company is offering credit cards to college students, and then later in the second sentence they end up saying that the company charges an annual fee for using the line of credit. So I guess sometimes people can get a little confused between the line of credit and credit cards. So like I said, it's just important to make sure that you go through the question and you read it very carefully. So I had picked out a couple of the keywords. There was credit cards, there was credit card fee, annual fee revenue. So I went ahead and used what I thought was going to be one of the best keywords, annual fee revenue, and no results were found. And this might happen. You might have to try a couple different terms and, you know, a couple different keywords in order to be able to figure out exactly where the authoritative literature is for the question that they're asking. And that's fine, that's okay. And that's also why you're practicing and making sure that you're checking out these research questions before you get to the test, so that you can start to master where to pick out the keywords, what keywords to pick out. So we're going to go ahead and try something else. And we're going to put in credit card fee this time. So I had credit card fee and I searched and I got these 3 different options that we could go through. And what you can also do is if you look at the top of the screen where we were able to search, you can also see where it says search within. So if you feel like you have, you know, a ton of options and it's going to take up too much time for you to actually go into each one and read through, what you can do is hit that search within button and click on any one of these, and it will, you know, highlight those keywords for you, so it's a little bit faster and easier for you to navigate through each one of these sections of the codification. Okay, so now we want to go back to this question again, because we want to make sure that we're quickly and easily finding exactly what we need. So the question reads, again, how and when Lanny should recognize the annual fee revenue. But then they also say in the question, unless specifically requested, your response should not cite implementation guidance. And guess what? When we searched credit card fee, one of the items that showed up was implementation guidance and illustrations, that first piece of the codification. So they specifically told us not to reference that. So that already knocks out one of the answers that we possibly could use for this simulation. So let's move on and take a look at recognition, because the question did ask about recognition, how and when we should recognize this fee. So going through the answer, there is a section for credit card fees, which is exactly where we would want to be, but a lot of what is under this literature does not actually apply to us. We're looking for annual fees, and a lot of what's in here is specifically discussing origination costs, which is not what we want. Then we also do have this section 2515 that actually answers part of the question, but not all of it. So let's read it really quick. It says, credit card fees generally cover many services to cardholders. Accordingly, fees that are periodically charged to cardholders shall be deferred. So we know that this annual fee, it is a fee that's charged periodically once a year, and we know that it's now going to be a deferred fee or deferred revenue for them. So that does answer part of the question, but it doesn't necessarily tell us how we're supposed to account for it. So we could consider this answer, but let's go back and take a look at subsequent measurements, because we know that recognition only answered part of our question. So if we go to the credit card fees and costs section under this piece of the codification, we actually are able to find exactly how to account for these fees. So if you look in section 35.5, which I did put a little box around so we could read it together, it says fees deferred in accordance with paragraphs 310, 20, 25, 15 shall be recognized on a straight line basis over the period the fee entitles the cardholder to use the card. So that's where our answer is. It tells us when to actually account for that revenue, which is on a straight line basis over the period that the fee entitles the cardholder to use. And we also know from what we previously read under recognition that is actually also cited here, we know that it's a deferred expense or a deferred revenue, depending on what side you're on. So now the important thing is to be able to take this response and correctly format it in the research simulation screen that we were just in. So take note at the top of the screen. I also put a nice little red box around it. It'll tell you FASB codification, assets. It tells you section 310, which is receivables. And then it gives you all of the subsections. So make sure you write this down. So I would take my pen and write down on my scrap paper during my test 310-20-35-5 and make sure you double check that before you hop out. So now let's go back and put our answer. And like I said, it's really important how you format your answer, okay? Because depending on the topic, you might have multiple digits, you might have digits and letters, you don't know. So you have to make sure that when you're in the authoritative literature, you write down exactly what you see. So it specifically even tells us here that FASB ASC topics are 3 digits, which we wrote down in section 310. And this is just an example that if you did not correctly format it, at least, they do give us a little bit of a break and they'll let you know. You'll see a little X in the box. You'll see a check mark in the box if you do correctly format that section. But like I said, make sure that you write it down, double check it, because you don't want to transpose something by accident or write something down incorrectly and then get the entire simulation wrong. So the first topic is going to be 3 digits, so we know we're good. Then we put in our subtopic, which they said is usually 2 or 3 digits, depending on what section of the codification we're looking at. And then we have the next piece, which is 35, or section 35, and it tells you that it's either 2 digits or an uppercase letter followed by 2 digits. And then it tells you the format of the last piece of this, which is basically, 1, 2, or 3 digits, followed in some cases by 1 or 2 uppercase letters. So that's why I'm saying it's very important to write this down correctly, and also make sure that you practice these so you're used to seeing how to answer these questions and how they're formatted. So that concludes our little tutorial on the research simulation. I also wanted to be able to open it up to some questions if anybody has anything that they want to answer or that they want to ask that I can answer, or if there was any questions about the simulation itself.
So as a reminder, everyone, please feel free to jot down your questions and throw those in the box. I'm not seeing any questions yet, Jess.
Okay.
So hopefully that's good news, that they completely understand how to tackle the research questions. I think the information you shared was extremely beneficial and helpful, especially when it comes to looking at that authoritative literature and how to really drill in to find the proper answer. That was really great information.
Oh,
While
good.
you are deciding if you want to submit a question, and I do want to let you all know that as a participant in today's webinar, we are excited to offer you $500 off our full course enrollment. So you can visit our website at surgentcpareview.com and enter in webinar 500 at checkout, and it'll take $500 off your course costs. And so we know it can be expensive in getting a CPA review program. We do cover research questions. We have a number of research questions in our program that will give you a lot of practice in tackling these kinds of simulation questions. So you can rest assured that you'll get a lot of that information. And I'm sure Jess would agree with me. It's also a good idea to go out to the AICPA's website to do some of the practice questions and sims that they have out there on their website. You can never practice too much, so we encourage you to do that too.
Definitely.
Well, Jess, I'm not seeing any questions, so I think it was pretty straightforward information. If anybody has anything, Jess, if you want to go ahead and put your email back up there, feel free to reach out to Jess. Her email's there at sanduj@surgent.com. If you feel like you need to ask her a question after we close out the webinar, please feel free to reach out to her. You can also reach out to myself. I'm Valerie Wendt. My email is Wendt, W-E-N-D-T. The initial V is in Valerie at surgent.com, and I'm happy to assist you as well. So I think with that, Jess, I think we can conclude the webinar, and I want to thank everyone for spending a little bit of time with us this afternoon. Look for more webinars coming in the future. We appreciate your time this afternoon. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.